Hello, everybody. It's Phil Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. Today is the 30th of April, 2023. Click on the subscribe button below here to subscribe to future episodes and also the notification bell in the far upper right to be notified when they're released. Today's topic is the native ugly American. So let me pull up my notes and we'll go ahead and get started on this. The ugly American is one of our country's most influential novels ever. In terms of political impact, it rivals Uncle Tom's Cabin and Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. Published in 1958, it discloses how America's diplomatic corps in Southeast Asia was heading toward a disaster only 5 years later that would become known as the Vietnam War. Even though some of the novel's characters are committed to the local people, most are either incompetent or out of touch with the people they are trying to help. The term ugly American has since mutated into an expression of the boorishness and insensitive parochialism by Americans when they travel abroad. Now, 65 years later, American Northerners are fleeing their native states to resettle the South. Like the novel's characters, they arrive in the South ignorant, even disdainful of the local idioms, culture, and customs. Worse, they refuse to integrate into their new society, believing their own society to be intrinsically and inherently superior. Instead, they demand that the Southern culture be transformed into the Northerner's idealized standard, which really doesn't exist, and to adopt his corrupted beliefs about the South. That is why the national media crudely mistook one of the ropes commonly used to pull down garage doors at a NASCAR event for a KKK hangman's noose. Due to the Northerners' biased imagination and gigantic political influence, the FBI devoted almost 20 agents to that investigation. 20 agents to discover that the rope was just a handle to pull closed the garage doors. Confederate statue removals are another example of the native ugly American's transgressions and boorishness. 6 years ago, a 100-year-old memorial depicting two ordinary Confederates was removed from our local county courthouse. During the abrupt public hearings, removal proponents were bussed into town from elsewhere. They obviously knew this was going to happen, whereas residents were given only the briefest notice. The outsiders did not know they did not know much about the memorial and even less about the causes of the Civil War. They were paid to attend, and they just merely assumed that the Civil War was, quote, all about slavery. They did not know that one of the reasons that Northerners went to war was to retain manufacturing monopolies in their region by way of high deterrence tariffs that would keep imports out of the American market. None knew that tariffs on dutiable items during the 1860-61 secession crisis were 19%. But averaged 45% for the next 50 years as a consequence of Yankee, native, ugly American victory. That's more than double. And it lasted for more than 50 years. It lasted 50 years until Woodrow Wilson became president. Then it went down for 8 years and then right back up as soon as a Southerner got out of the White House. Our mayor in my town threw his weight behind this movement of Confederate statue removals. He grew up in a Chicago suburb. It's doubtful that he realized that Chicagoans welcomed Southern secession. It gave them the political power to get the first transcontinental railroad subsidized with federal money. More importantly, it gave them the political power to win a northern route for that railroad, which would benefit Chicago. It was not the best course because it had more and steeper elevation changes that required expensive tunneling, particularly through the Sierra Nevadas. In truth, the best path was a southern one from Memphis to Southern California, where the grade changes were gradual, thereby enabling lower cost construction. But that did not serve the needs of Chicago and the industrial might that came behind Chicago, enabling our mayor to grow up in a city that was economically powerful, meaning Chicago. With southern states out of the Union, the superior route from Memphis to Southern California had no chance of being selected purely because of the northern political power. Since at least the 1980s, teachers have failed to inform students of the Southerners' extraordinary loyalty toward America, notwithstanding that the North had impoverished the region for more than a century after the Civil War. 2 months before the 1941 Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, a Gallup poll revealed that 70% of Americans felt we must militarily stop Hitler. The figure in the South was not 70%, it was 90%, notwithstanding that Southerners had been insulted, impoverished, and abused by the Northern victors of the Civil War. Whether the native ugly American will continue to dominate our country's culture, particularly the cultural elite, is unknowable. Such cultural predictions are dicey, and I will not make one. Instead, I will merely offer the argument that those who have been taught to hate their ancestors may one day turn on those who have done the teaching, because such hatred is simply not endemically normal. Okay, that's what I have to say. Now, what I'd like to show you is books like The Ugly American and Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. These things transform our society. Novels do this more effectively than nonfiction books. In fact, The Ugly American was originally written as a nonfiction book by 2 members of the diplomatic corps. It was turned into fiction, and as fiction, it had a wider audience, and as fiction, people could identify with the characters, and it had tremendous impact. Here's another fiction book, Firepower by Philip Lee. This is the greatest Civil War story never told. It's about the adoption of repeating rifles. Repeating rifles were invented before the war, but they did not get even moderate distribution until the last year of the war, which was 4 years later. There were dark forces at work. Christopher Spencer, who had invented the repeater, or one of the repeaters, the one that was dominant during the Civil War, he wanted to get that weapon into the Union arsenal, but he was blocked almost everywhere he turned. My story, although fictional, is based upon historical fact, and it connects the dots to provide a plausible explanation of what was going on and why the chief of ordnance for the U.S. Army refused to adopt on his own volition repeating rifles. Now, if you'd like to get a copy of this, it's $17 with my autograph. just email me, Phil, PHIL_Lee, LEIGH at me.com. If you just want a copy of the book, you can get it at Amazon. We $13 in paperback and $4 in Kindle. But there's a lot in this story. Keep in mind, I cannot emphasize this enough. Novels have a bigger impact on culture than do nonfiction works. Think about it. The Ugly American, Uncle Tom's Cabin, The Jungle, 7 Days in May, Failsafe. Well, I could go on. But this story is going to teach you what it was like to try and get technological innovations implemented into the Army during the Civil War, and the process of creating the technological implication. Look, the repeating rifle in 1860 was almost a weapon of mass destruction compared to the single-shot muzzle loaders that the other side would have. There are nonfiction books that attempt to tell the story. There's a lot of blanks, and they just don't get us any. So consider Firepower by Philip Lee. All right, that's our show for today, and I want to thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time.